Well, welcome to Unit 6, everybody. Unit 6 is simplifying expressions. Exponents and factoring is my favorite. All right, fun, cool cover as always. We have our Unit 6 TEKS. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 TEKS from the state of Texas. On page 3, we're going to start off with adding and subtracting polynomials. You're going to want to press pause so you can just at least copy down what's inside the notes for polynomial. And once you press pause, copy it down, unpause, and then I'll explain it. So I'm ready for you to press pause so you can copy down everything. Okay, here we are at unpause. So the definition of a polynomial is an expression of two or more algebraic terms. They can have variables, numbers, and a combination of. Okay? An expression. Expression. There's no equal sign. How many? More than two algebraic terms is a polynomial. More than two. Okay. What are the characteristics of a polynomial? Well, you can characterize polynomials by their degree, which is the exponent, okay, and how many terms it has. Remember, terms are separated by plus and minus signs. That's how you'll know how many terms there are, because you'll see something and then you'll see a sign. And you'll see another term, it'll be a sign. And you'll be able to count those terms. Okay, examples of a polynomial. X plus 7 is one of them. 3x to the 4th power minus 8x squared plus 4 is a second one. Purple, negative x cubed minus x squared plus x is a third example. And then green, 10xgh is a polynomial. Okay. Here we are with some non-examples. Well, polynomials only exist when they do not have a variable in the denominator. So 7 divided by an x, even if it's not squared, 7 divided by x has an x in the bottom of the fraction. It's not a polynomial. And if there's a negative exponent, remember another name for exponent is degree. Degree and exponent mean the same thing. So exponents can't be negative. All right, so make sure you have all that copied down. Now we have monomial, binomial, trinomial, and polynomial. How many terms do you think monomial will have in it? How many terms do you think a binomial will have? How many terms do you think a trinomial will have? And how many terms do you think a polynomial will have? All right, I've underlined in purple the prefix of the word that should help you come up with the answer for the number of terms. So what does mono mean? Mono means one term. All right, so an example of a monomial is the one in green. 10xgh is a monomial. Okay, a binomial has how many terms? Well, think about a bicycle. Think about biracial. Well, 2. So 2 terms. And the one that has 2 terms is, you're right, an x plus 7. That had 2 terms. Okay, what about a trinomial? Think about a tricycle. The trifecta Yep, it means 3 terms. So in our example of a polynomial, the example in red is a trinomial. It was 3x to the 4th minus 8x squared plus 4. For a polynomial, also the other example in our examples in purple, negative x cubed minus x squared plus x. That's also 3 terms. Sorry about that. And for a polynomial, the number of terms would be 4 or more. Well, 3 or more. But after the mono, binomial, and trinomial, well, there's no other fancy name for when there's 4. A quadrinomial. We don't call it a quadrinomial. They just said, bump that. We're going to call everything else a polynomial. All right. 3 or more terms. So again, right now, these words, monomial, binomial, trinomial, and polynomial, are all characteristics of our second orange phrase, the number of terms. The number of terms. All right, so we can classify polynomials by the exponent as well, as you saw right here. We can classify polynomials by exponent. So for instance, you need to write this down. If the highest exponent is a 1, we would call that a linear polynomial. When the highest exponent is 2, we call that a quadratic polynomial. When the highest exponent is 3, and that's a cubic polynomial. And then 4 or higher, they don't get fancy with the names, so it's boring. 4th degree polynomial, 5th degree polynomial, 6th degree polynomial. So let's work a couple examples of adding and subtracting, and then I'll explain how to name them. Let's start with adding. We're going to combine like terms. So I'm going to start with my highest exponent, negative 5x squared plus, and on this side, it's a 2x squared. Negative 5. So in your calculator, you would type in negative 5 plus 2, and you would get negative 3. Leave everything else alone. Just add the coefficient. So after x squared, the next highest would just be x. So plus x minus 4x. So when I would type that into my calculator, I would type in a positive 1 minus 4. I would only type in the coefficient. So a positive 1 minus 4 is a negative 3x. Leave the x squared, leave the x like it was in the problem. And the constants go last. So plus 2 and a negative 1. So what is 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, here's our final answer. Now, what kind of polynomial is it? I want you to name it by the highest exponent, which is 2, and by how many terms it consists of. 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. So look back up. What do we call it with 3 terms? And what do we call the highest exponent when it's a 2? Highest exponent when it's a 2 is quadratic. So this is a quadratic and it has 3 terms. So it's a trinomial. So that is the name we would name it. Moving on to example 2. Again, that's not what I want, little toots. Leave me alone. Again, leave me where I want to be, right here. Okay, I'm going to start over with the highest exponent first. I see a 13x squared plus an x minus a 6. So the highest exponent in this problem is a 2 because x has an invisible 1 above it. 6 doesn't even have an x. Okay, so that's going to match up with that. So again, we have 13x squared. We're adding an x squared. In my calculator, I would type in 13 plus 1 and get 14x squared. Next, I would add up my x values, which I would be plus x and plus 4x. So in my calculator, I would say, what is a positive 1 plus a positive 4? What's 1 plus 4? Well, we know that's 5, and we put an x back next to it. Finally, what is negative 6 plus 10? So negative 6 plus 10, you would type that into your calculator, and you would get positive 4. There's our final answer. Again, we're going to name it by what's our highest exponent and how many terms does it have. And you'll notice that each term I use a different color. So since you can count 3 colors, 3 means trinomial. So this is a quadratic trinomial. All right, let's hop over to subtraction. So with subtraction, you need to use what you learned in 7th grade, which is the distributive property. We want to think as if this is a negative 1, and it needs to multiply to every term after it. And multiplying by a negative 1 changes the sign of what you see. So I know that that times that is a positive, that times that would be a negative, that times that would be a positive, okay? So now, the fast way to do it is after the minus sign, we're going to change every sign. And then you add. So for subtraction, you're going to change to a plus sign and switch all the signs after it. Again, we're going to change the minus sign in the middle to a plus sign and change all of the signs after, not before, after it, like I did here. I changed that, I changed that, I changed that, and I changed that. That's everything checked off the list. Now you start over with combining like terms. What's the highest exponent? That one. Put them together. Now I have 4x squared, and I'm now adding a 2x squared because everything was positive. So what do you type into Desmos or your calculator? 4 plus 2 is 6. So your answer is 6x squared. Move to your next phase. The next highest exponent is a negative 2x. There's nothing to combine with it on this one. So it doesn't do anything. We just minus 2x. And then last of all, let me not use green, let me use blue. A +5 and a +4. You would just type that into your calculator and get 9. Yes, y'all are right. This is it. There are 3 terms. The highest exponent is 2. That's a quadratic trinomial. I'll do one more problem. Okay. We are going to exercise the fact that this is subtraction. So when you see subtract, you're going to change the sign to add and change the signs after it. Done. Now I can start with my very first thing. What's the highest exponent? Well, it would be an x squared. Put these two together. What is 4x squared plus a negative 3x squared? Well, in your calculator, type in 4 plus negative 3. It's going to tell you it's 1. So 1x squared. Next, I'm going to use my x terms. Now I have a negative 3x and a positive. Remember, x is really a 1. So I'm going to type in a negative 3 plus 1, and that's a negative 2. Then last of all, I'm going to type in a 5 plus an 8. Well, 5 plus 8 is 13. Now, it just so happens that we're getting the same answer, guys. Yes, this is still a 2. It's still a quadratic. Yes, this still has 3 terms. Trinomial. Oops. Can't even spell trinomial anymore. There we go. Trinomial. Okay. Let's skip over the star practice. Let's talk about laws of exponents. This is our last page of our notes today. Simplify numeric and algebraic expressions using the law of exponents, including integral and rational exponents. A lot of fancy words. We're just going to dive right in. Identify the parts of the expression below. I think if I write them out, it'll be easier. So yes, this whole thing is an expression. Doesn't have an equal sign. A term, these are all terms. So there are 3 of them. Let's go to purple. A coefficient is the number multiplied to a variable. So this is a coefficient, this is a coefficient. They're both multiplied to an x because they're sitting next to each other. Let's go to a new color, blue. A constant is a number by itself. 7 is a constant. Next, we'll go orange. Well, this is not a monomial because mono means 1. This is not a binomial. Binomial means 2, bi. So this is a trinomial because we have 1 term, 2 terms, and 3 terms. So this is a trinomial, and the highest exponent is 2, which means it's a quadratic trinomial. Quadratic. Okay, and we're going to move forward by calling this next part below an exponent and base will be below here. All right. If that was confusing, press stop and rewind so you can hear all that again. Okay, let's read what this says. An exponent refers to the number of times a number is multiplied by itself. Another name for an exponent is called a power. Another name for that is also degree. What is the power of this x? What's the degree of this x? What is the exponent of this x? And it's the number you are multiplying, it is the base. Okay, so let's take a just quick peek at what this has in purple and green. The big thing is the 3. So the big thing is called the base because it's big. And the exponent is small. It's called an exponent, degree, power. So what this means is to take the big 3 base and write it little exponent 2 times. So that's why you have a big 3 times a big 3, because there's 2 3s, and that makes 9. Okay, so when it says expand here, let's go back to a different color. Expand means pull apart. So a 4 to the power of 3, we would write that as 4 cubed. That would be expanded 4 times 4 times 4. Now this would be negative 4 cubed. So negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. Number 3, if I was to write this expanded, this would be different than our second problem. This says negative 4 times 4 times 4. That's the difference between number 2 and number 3. Number 2 says take negative 4 and times it to itself 3 times. That's why negative is repeated, negative 4, negative 4, negative 4. Number 3, it just says negative 4 to the power of 3, negative 4/3, negative 4 to the cubic power, 4 cubed, negative 4 cubed. So we would just write a negative out in front and then 4 times 4 times 4. That's all positive. Okay, number 4 would be 2 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and x 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're expanding the problem. Same thing for number 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Done. And number 6, 5 times 5 times m times m times m times n times n times n times n. Done. That's expanding. And then the opposite would be to write the expression as a base raised to a power. So in number 1, I see the base is 2. So it's 2 to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 to the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, so x to the 4th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 to the 5th. 1, 2, 3, 4, x to the 4th. They would sit multiplied side by side. All right, so that's m cubed, n cubed, negative 2 cubed, negative 2 squared, 2 squared, x. Done. All right, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you were able to follow through and understand everything. If you don't, come to tutoring. We'll talk about it. All right, bye.